World Education Fair 2022, organized by Campus Direct, your trusted partner in education.
The first impression of this massacre was that it was purely the work of a few Islamic extremists. However, subsequent investigations indicate that this massacre was part of a grand political plot. Despite our repeated requests and those of civil organizations pursuing the truth, the incumbent government of Sri Lanka has failed to mete out justice to the victims. Instead of uncovering the truth behind the attack and prosecuting those responsible, there are attempts to harass and intimidate those who clamor for justice. As a result, nearly 3 years after the horrendous crime, we are still in the dark as to what really happened on that Easter Sunday. As this is a case of a serious violation of the fundamental rights of the aggrieved victims, we earnestly call upon the UNHRC and all its member countries to support the continuation of evidence gathering initiated by the Council last year and to devise a means to ensure an impartial investigation to unravel the truth behind the Easter Sunday massacre.
Meanwhile, Samagi Jana Balawegaya MP Harin Fernando requested the international community to support the people of Sri Lanka whose human rights have been threatened.
My parliamentary colleague Ranjan Ramanayaka was sentenced as much as 4 years and his civic rights removed and imprisonment for alleged contempt of court, which is not an offence defined in the law, and had no right to appeal. The President has ignored requests, including from International Parliamentary Union, to pardon Ramanayaka so that he could resume his political work. The cries of the victims of the Easter Sunday bombing and the truth and justice continue to be in vain. The non-prosecution and the negligence of high officials give rise to the suspicion that the real brains behind the attacks are being shielded. Instead, the investigator Shania Besekara, dubbed as Sherlock Holmes of Sri Lanka, and senior police officer Ravi Seniratna are being hounded and their lives are in danger. Added to all this, the economic mismanagement, severe shortage of essential items, disruption of electricity supply, long queues of fuel, are soaring cost of living is just of its consequences. As I speak today, the main opposition office also was attacked by a government member. I urge the international community to support people of Sri Lanka whose human rights have been threatened than ever before.
We reiterate our concern about the militarization of drug control and treatment in the country and its negative repercussions on human rights as well as individual and public health. A worrying pattern of deaths in custody of persons arrested for drug offences in alleged shootouts with law enforcement or while assisting law enforcement operations have been documented. The lack of investigation into these custodial deaths entrenches impunity and the use of violence by state agencies.
Member countries, including the core group on Sri Lanka, also spoke about the human rights situation in the country.
HRC Resolution 46/1, it will only hinder the promotion and protection of human rights and national reconciliation in Sri Lanka. We call on relevant parties to respect Sri Lanka's sovereignty, political independence, and the path of human rights development of their own choice in light of their national conditions, in constructive dialogue and cooperation, and to stop politicizing human rights issues or using human rights as a pretext to interfere in the internal affairs of Sri Lanka.
We welcome recent releases on bail of Anaf Ajazim and Hijaz Hizbullah as a positive first step. Whilst we acknowledge initial reforms of the Prevention of Terrorism Act, these do not go far enough. We note with concern that minority communities are facing increased marginalisation, with allegations of land grabs in the north and east of the country.
Amnesty remains deeply concerned by the shrinking civic space and urges the government to halt reprisals against critics and perceived critics, including those advocating for justice for the tragic April 2019 bombings. Amnesty continues to call for an immediate moratorium on the use of the Prevention of Terrorism Act, which continues to be used to detain hundreds, particularly minorities, for prolonged periods without charge or trial. Repeated attempts to amend the Act have proved futile, including the latest iteration of amendments that fail to address critical gaps in the law to bring it in line with international law.